Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ozark Radio Hour, brought to you by the Eureka Springs Independent and the Inside Straight and Thanatopsis Club. I'm Richard Pille.
And I'm Ken Crow, and we're your hosts for about an hour of purely organic radio, always fresh, always local, and always honest, even if we're not always perfect. But today, we've got a big show.
We do indeed, Ken. Sharon Laborde interviews writer Megan Kirk about the life of the writer in Welcome to the Conversation. I'm going to read a short play about a political convention with our good friend in Missouri, author Josh Young, who we've had on the show before. And closing out the show is Tracy Johnson with an incredible band called Rosenbridge. Rosenbridge is a group made up of classically trained musicians. I think one of them plays for the Tulsa Symphony, and they knock the socks off of Pink Floyd and some other bands like that. And best of all, Jeremiah Alvarado and Dan Croats are actually here in the studio today.
That's the best.
Just say hello to Jeremiah, would you please?
Hello, Jeremiah. Welcome to the Ozark Radio Hour studio. You know, I mean, you got all the way to Berryville, you got across the Kings River unescorted, and you still have shoes on.
Well, I mean...
You probably didn't know that you were supposed to leave them on the other side of the bridge, but hey, you know.
I don't know why you guys seem to think that Berryville is such an other world in comparison to Eureka Springs.
That's because we live in it, and we go to Eureka Springs on Wednesday night and watch the goings-on, and we listen to you and read your columns, so we do know, in fact, that it is another world.
Jeremiah, it is an entirely other world. You live in the People's Republic of Eureka Springs, and we here are in Moonfook.
Well, things over here are so quiet. I mean, we have a city council,
an effective city council
that is essentially functional, and you know, I mean, they did something today. This morning, Mayor Tim McKinney started a cleanup project here on the Berryville Square. They were out here at 5:30 in the morning spraying the weeds and getting ready to clean the streets and make the city look a little more presentable.
So, Jeremiah, you were not filled with fear as you crossed the river?
No.
Okay, wonderful. I just wanted to know.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, the voice that you hear is none other than Dan Croats, who we let out of the studio. We didn't really introduce you or welcome you to the program, but you're talking to Jeremiah, and you just interjected yourself into the whole program, so welcome.
And I apologize for not waiting for an invitation, but...
or an introduction.
You may not have gotten one.
You have never welcomed me before.
That's not true. That is not true.
We welcome you when you've written it into the script.
All right. And Jeremiah, what are you doing here?
Talking with you three, and eventually doing the third side of the coin.
So you're going to read your editorial?
I wouldn't say it's an editorial, but yes.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I'm glad you're here. This is the first time we've met personally, and the third side of the coin has become one of my favorite parts of the podcast, and I do appreciate it in spite of the grumpy two old men you see before me.
All right.
So, Kent?
Yes.
Jeremiah's going to do third side of the coin.
Yeah.
And so has anybody written or anything this week?
No. Well, you know, it kind of reminds me, I think we got a couple of emails from folks about your last editorial, Jeremiah, on how the Eureka Springs City Council operates. Patricia Lehman from Tulsa writes, we've been listening to the Ozark Radio Hour for a few weeks now since our last visit to Eureka Springs in May, and we'll be back soon to start looking for a weekend getaway to buy. Jeremiah's assessment of how the City Council was a hoot, but it's also a cautionary tale that makes us wonder if we should look for a place outside the city limits. And by the way, no sales tax increases. You've forgotten about extra lodging taxes you already make visitors pay. Jeremiah, what do you think about those comments?
Almost every city that is a tourist city around us already makes them pay visitors' lodging taxes. It's just part of essentially a tourist tax. And the lodging taxes, in Branson or Hot Springs are usually quite larger than ours. But I do understand why, you don't want a sales tax increase also. And I guess now it'd be all items, not just retail.
Well, may I ask you a direct question?
Okay.
Can you ask a direct question?
Well, let me try.
Okay.
All right.
Now we're on cross-examination.
Why are you trying to lay yet another burden on the backs of a poor working man?
Well, wait a minute. He's not on the city council. What do you say he's trying to do it?
Oh, he's all for this sales tax.
Well, I mean, he may be supporting the necessity for improving Eureka Springs infrastructure and getting rid of lead pipes and stop poisoning the women and children of the city, but that doesn't mean that he's laying the burden off on the poor.
Well, shall we hear from Jeremiah?
I'm sorry. I start as an advocate and I just can't stop. I've been doing it all week.
That's right. Folks, if you ever need an attorney, retired Judge Kent Crow is practicing law on the town square in Berryville.
You can't make him quit, actually.
All right, Jeremiah, I'm turning you over. Okay. Dan, you're on your own.
Well, the thing is that I do most of my shopping in Eureka already. I try not to come out towards Berryville as often as possible. And I'm willing to pay whatever that amount is. At this point, it's now 1%. It's dropped down from 2% on just retail items to 1% on, I think, all sales items. Could be a little bit wrong on that one. It's been a little fuzzy lately. As someone who does most of my shopping in Eureka, I am willing to put out so that, I don't have to worry about the lead in the water.
Not everyone in Eureka Springs makes the great amount of money you journalists get. And, they can, they're bartenders and hospitality workers that are making below minimum wage, and a burden of a sales tax on them, putting the responsibility on those people to fix the pipes and the infrastructure of property owners. And property owners have been kicking this can down the road for so long now, they need to pony up and pay for their own infrastructure. They're the ones that are going to make a profit off of it. That's how I feel about it.
I say pass the city tax and let's go to the barricades.
Well, Richard, I got to ask, how much do you think that journalists make?
Well, it's got to be tons. I mean,
and you are a semi-skilled intellectual elitist, so
that's just my personality, Dan.
So you're really rolling in the dough.
Well, let's get off of that.
I wouldn't say that, but
okay.
We got another letter, especially for Jeremiah.
Oh, boy.
And this one's from Sharon Sloan, Dr. Sloan to you guys, who says, the Pokemon Go craze is the surest sign that civilization is ending. It explains why a-hole Donald Trump is being seriously, kill me now, considered as a candidate for president, and why high school graduates can't find the state capitol on a map and stop offering excuses for behaviors that are turning us into idiocracy. Well, there you go, Jeremiah. What do you think of that one?
Welcome to the Ozark Radio Hour.
I am not sure what to say to this one. First off, that's a very nice straw man argument that you have in there.
Very good.
You mean that Dr. Sloan has?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we can't blame the Pokemon craze on Donald Trump.
No.
All right.
Gravy. I mean, you're just... What it is looking for something to complain about and just finding the first thing that pops up. But in response to the stop offering excuses for behaviors, the thing is that, you guys made a joke last week about...
Don't say you guys. I wasn't here.
Well, I can't remember who was always on. So, sorry, Ken.
That's all right.
But, made a joke about, looking at your phone and walking into the street or something like that is the stupidest thing ever. The thing is that behavior is made because people are stupid, not because of what's on their cell phone. And that... I'm just saying.
I have to agree with you. you?
People are stupid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
people are stupid. Sorry, but
So now our listenership is down to
8.
Yes, friends, we're really sorry. We didn't mean that.
well, no, but
Well, there's an exception. Our listenership happens to be comprised of 4,000 of the most intellectually sophisticated individuals that have ever tuned in to a
You
podcast.
really are a lawyer, aren't you?
you are really trying to save me here, aren't you?
Thank you. All right.
So, anyway,
All right.
Wait a minute. I'm not done with this.
You can edit this out, right?
Judge Crow.
Dr. Sloan, is Dr. Sloan a medical doctor or a PhD?
No, she is a real doctor, not a practitioner.
A real medical doctor.
No, a real doctor.
A real doctor.
Yes.
You mean with the PhD, the letters behind her name?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And so I'm kind of on board with Jeremiah. I think anybody with PhD should probably have a little stronger logical argument than what was presented, at least in the portion of the letter that you presented to us. I'm sure that Dr. Sloan's arguments were far more sophisticated than this excerpt that Richard has presented. And Dr. Sloan, I apologize for Richard editing your letter to the extent that your logic was even questioned.
Kent, the fact that you're a champion of everyone today is admirable.
Jeremiah, I think, has really brought some important issues to the table. I think that his editorials have really sparked some important conversations in the city.
You bet.
Some of the information and the statistics that he's presented in those arguments, have elicited some really strong responses, I think, on both sides of the table. And so, I think we've bonded with Jeremiah. We've done our man thing, and now I think we need to get on with the show.
All right. Well, Jeremiah, what's happening in the third side of the coin this week? What are you covering?
Mostly just talking about some of the city's websites.
City's website.
Yeah.
And why in the world would we be interested in that?
Let me interject here. The city needs to clean up their website with regard to their city ordinances so people can figure out what the laws in Eureka Springs are.
All right.
That's one thing. Okay. I don't know about the rest of their websites. I haven't looked at them. Jeremiah, are they good, bad, or just a mess?
I would say that they need some cleaning up. They aren't updated as often as they need to be.
Okay.
Well, can we get to the third side of the coin?
Yes, we can.
Hello, everyone. This is Jeremiah Alvarado, bringing you the third side of the coin. Today, I just want to talk about something, and it's more of something that's a peeve rather than a larger issue in town, but nonetheless, I do feel I need to comment on it. As many know, the city of Eureka Springs has a multitude of websites, such as the city's personal website, the CAPC, the Mayor's Task Force, and an event website. And for those who don't know what the website for the Mayor's Task Force is, it's www.eurekaspringsliveworkplay.us. Now, in the Mayor's Task Force meetings, it has been mentioned a few times over the past few months that this new website is a great thing for people wanting to find information on our town, to which I say it is not. Let me explain. It would be if it were easy enough to start off. The Mayor's Task Force is a commission in town that is meant to consider ideas to help boost the economy within our city. The website has some great information. But my first peeve is that it is hard as all get out to find. I tried using all the skills that my entire life of sitting in front of Google has taught me, and to no avail could I find the task force website easily. In fact, I pretty much had to type into the Google search bar, Eureka Springs Live, Work, Play as the search just to get the website to even pop up. But let alone the fact that the website is not listed in any of the city's multiple websites. Second peeve is pretty much the look and feel of the website, and I've talked about this in the past. When the website was first made and advertised in the task force meeting, I said the website looked awful. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it does still need some serious work. Aside from the opening page, many of the other pages within the website look cluttered with information, or that information still has the look of a blown-up JPEG, and it results in a really grimy and fuzzy look. It might be a personal thing, but honestly, get it cleaned up and advertise it a little more on the city website or Facebook. The reason it's not at the top of Google is because it doesn't get many hits, and of course it doesn't, because it's impossible to find within the depths of the internet without omnisciently knowing what the website is. Now, moving away from the Mayor's Task Force website, which to be honest just needs some sprucing up, we go to the city website, cityofeurekasprings.us. Anyway, the city's website is incredibly easy to find, probably due to it just being there for a long time, and also because it really is a hub to find all the other websites that the city has. Honestly, though, you guys have got to update it. The city has on one of the pages a history website for Eureka Springs called eurekasprings.thenandnow.org. It's on the website under Economic Development if you want to go look at it. The website no longer seems to be owned by Eureka Springs. In fact, if you click on it, the website is in a totally different language, and if Google Translate served me well, it's Japanese. For some reason, it talks about aviation, and I expect a lot of it was lost in Google's translations, but you get the idea. The link is still on the website. Along with that, parts of the website are still under construction permanently, such as contact information for businesses, or the page that talks about the police department, which while the police department falls under a very easy type of definition, so does the fire department, and they at least have a link that goes to a website that talks about them. One line of the police department would be better than getting met with a new tab, which has a little JPEG of a construction worker pointing to under construction sign. Commissioners in town talk so much about how we need to follow a digital trend, but still fail to keep up with what they already have. There seems to be this weird mentality that all we need today is Facebook or Twitter or some form of social media to show what this town is made of, and it's not. Facebook and other forms of social media are supplements to having a website. They are doors, gateways to more information. But if that more information is hard to find or not even there, then you have a major problem. This has been Jeremiah Alvarado with the third side of the coin, wishing all of you a wonderful week.
For a long time discussed and brought up before the need for high-speed internet capabilities here in the county. We have everything else. We have all the amenities that startup companies that use the internet like, and we have all that. I'm an entrepreneur, and I look at these web pages, and I'm going, holy smokes! These guys are in prehistoric times. It's not attractive. It doesn't give information, and I really appreciate the comments about it. We as a community need to update our digital presence overall.
Well, I think Jeremiah, again, has touched on a really important issue for the city and the community, because Eureka Springs websites are a portal and an introduction to the community itself, and a failure to maintain those, update them, make them accessible, make sure the information is current, is just absolutely vital to the economic development of Eureka Springs. One of the big issues with Eureka is always the influx or the fluctuations in tourism, and everyone is always grappling with how to make that better, how to make it more accessible, how to bring more people to the community, how to make more people aware of it, and the failure of the city to, in fact, maintain a viable website and pertinent links, or links that actually operate and function and take you to other departments in the city, is just absolutely critical. And I think that our comment from one of our listeners and the letter that we received about them now being cautious about living within the city itself is a direct reflection of failure of the city to be able to communicate effectively with people. Additionally, I think that the city, has to look at what they are trying to accomplish and what they hope to do. We've talked before on this program about transportation networks. We've talked about high-speed internet, as Richard has mentioned. We've talked about all of the fundamentals that need to be addressed to establish a good foundation for the community to provide economic development and sustainability. And the failure of the city to address this simple aspect of economic development, I think, is an indictment of the current administration and the city council. They need to get off their butts and get things going.
Well, Jeremiah, thank you very much for bringing this problem to our attention. I hope you will follow up with this. It's a timely subject. Last week, our cultural editor, Sharon Laborde, sat down with longtime Eureka Springs resident and business owner Megan Kirk to talk about the writing life and Megan's work on a novel in progress that is set in Eureka Springs. So here's Sharon Laborde, and welcome to the conversation.
Welcome to the conversation. This is Sharon Laborde. Today I'm visiting with Megan Kirk, longtime resident of Eureka Springs, Arkansas, business owner with her husband Sam, and author of a new manuscript that we will be discussing today, along with her writing process and what inspires her to write. Welcome, Megan. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Sharon.
Before we talk about your novel, give us a little background information, if you will. When did you become interested in writing, and what started you on this journey?
Well, that goes back quite a ways. I actually credit Laura Ingalls Wilder as my early inspiration. Her books and her shows ran for most of my childhood, and we watched them religiously, all the family in the living room. And then when I got old enough to read the books, I read the whole series, and I read a lot of them multiple times. I just finished reading the series to my youngest daughter, and so she was an inspiration again. I liked that the shows were based on her memoirs, and she narrated the shows, and each show ended with her, they called it her remembering book. And something struck me about that. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I thought, I'm going to do that. And I thought, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to write a memoir, which I'm not interested in memoir anymore, but the fiction, I like to make it up.
So even from an early age, you wanted to write?
I did. I really did. And then as soon as the Waltons came along too, also another great show that was based on John Boy, the writer, and begun and ended with his memoirs and his take and his perspective. Both of those shows made me think, that's what I want to do.
So you started out, when you started writing seriously, how long ago was this?
Well, as a child, I did write quite a bit, and I did a lot of stories, and I would record myself and listen to the stories. I got a little recognition growing up as being a writer. You know, I'd be asked to read papers. I would be asked to read fiction stories. I got an award in 6th grade as the best story writer. So it was always there. I never really thought about it as a career too much. It seemed kind of a long shot. And even in college, I took fiction writing. Why I didn't major in that and run with it, I don't know. So after college, I thought, okay, this is a good time to try it. And I did scratch out the bones for this current novel when I was 26. And I have a whole bunch of handwritten pages. And I put it aside, I got a job, and it just faded away. Then 10 years went by. I was pregnant with my 3rd daughter, and I picked it up again for some reason and started working on it and continued to work on it very diligently for 2 years. When I mean diligently, I mean I scrapped by on 5 to 10 hours a week. But I stuck with it.
Still, that's a significant amount.
It is.
With young children.
Absolutely. So why I decided to pick it up when I had 2 kids and 1 on the way, I don't know. But I stuck with it as long as I could, which was about 2 years. Then I put it aside again for 5 years. And every now and then I'd look at it or I'd make some notes, but I literally dropped it for 5 years. My 3rd child got into kindergarten, and I actually 1st grade, and I picked it up again. And it took me about 2 years to complete it, and I've just completed it recently.
Well, you know, sometimes stories have to ferment too, and we think about them for a long, long time before they actually mature and we're ready to really sit down and put it all together. So I totally understand what you're talking about. Without giving away the plot, I have to ask you a little bit about your characters. They seem so real to me. They seem like people I know. How did these characters develop? You say you started it years ago, so were they fictional characters, or did you use a kind of a combination of people you knew and blend the personalities together? I'm fascinated with character development.
Yeah, my writing is all about the characters. I mean, the plot is solid, but it's all about the characters, and I have to know where they were born and what their parents did and what their family dynamic was like and what their parents' jobs were and what their teen years were like. I figure all of that out really before the story starts to unfold. And they're definitely 100% fictional. Everybody that's read this book, which is maybe 15 people, they all think, who did you base that on? Those have to be real
hard
people.
Not to think that.
Yeah, so I love that. That's a huge compliment that everyone really believes that they're real.
It means they're real and they're authentic, and that's what struck me. But I disagree with you to a certain extent. I think the way you develop your atmosphere and the setting, to me, also plays such a significant role in this manuscript. And of course, writing about this area, and it does take place in Northwest Arkansas, in an area around Eureka Springs, Beaver Lake.
Yeah, I love doing the local lore. Several of the chapters take place in Eureka. Several of the chapters take place in a fictional town on the lake, half an hour from here.
Exactly.
And then a few of the chapters take place in South Florida, which I did live there. So all the places that are in the book, I did live. And all the people are little tiny bits of a ton of people, but definitely not based on any one person.
One of my favorite writers, Pat Conroy, a Southern writer, admitted, and he recently passed away, but he admitted up front, quite openly, that his characters were based on his family members, people he knew, and he was not ashamed about it at all. And so because these characters seem so familiar to me, I wondered, and that was one of the main questions. And I wanted to ask you about character development. You really, though, looking at the setting and talking about that particular aspect of this story, I think you really captured the essence of Northwest Arkansas. All of the goings on in Eureka Springs, the atmosphere, the party atmosphere, the lifestyle. I think you talked a great deal about that, but you were also, there were so many details about the natural world that fascinated me. Have you always been into nature and an observer of detail?
I would say definitely yes. I've lived in a wilderness setting now for 15 years, definitely set in the middle of the woods with the creeks and the caves and the waterfalls, and we spend a lot of time out there. And, sometimes when I was writing, I would just open the door and just walk out and just take a little short walk and, notice some details and weave that into the story. And even as a child, I grew up in a pretty wilderness setting as well. And I enjoy that. I enjoy the detail and really making the setting integral to the story.
I think that's what makes the characters too come alive. They're in a real place that you can visualize. If your characters are developed, but you can't put them in a place and time, then there's trouble.
Right.
So you did that very well. Another thing that I'm curious about as a business owner and as a mother, and you've mentioned this, how on earth do you find time to write? Well, you said it took you many years, but once you get back into that writing mode, how do you manage that? How do you manage your time?
Well, it's a big part of making this happen is having a really set schedule. I have Fridays from 9 to 3 when the kids are in school. That's my day off from kids and from the store. And I literally wrote this book in 4 years of Fridays.
Wow.
A little bit of Wednesday time carved out. And toward the end, I started doing every other Sunday morning. But it didn't amount to much more than 10 hours a week ever. So out of the last 9 years, 4 of those years I spent on this 10-hour-a-week schedule. And then the 5 years that I took off were big thinking years. Like you said, things are fermenting, and I never let go of it mentally.
Right. Do you belong to a writer's group?
I did for probably the first 2 years that I did it when I was 35, 36. I went religiously to a writer's group at the Writers Colony, and I read a good portion of the book to that group. And then when I dropped
that was helpful to you.
Definitely. It was very fun and good feedback, and a setting where it's easy to be critical. When you hand it off to your friends or your family, you kind of have to beg them to be critical.
Exactly.
And in a writer's group, that's the point.
Sure.
Is to get critical feedback.
And it's also kind of toughens you up. And
it does.
It does. It helps. This is your first novel. I'm curious now about where do you go from here? Your plans for getting your manuscript out there and finding a publisher. Have you started that process?
I'm getting really close to getting serious about that. My mom edited the novel. I just got it back from her. She's a former teacher that specialized in writing. So she edited every line for every comma. She cited every rule. She's got it all marked up with a whole bunch of little tiny things, nothing big.
Right.
So I need to go through and make all those changes because I can't sleep at night until I do. So after I go through it one more time, then it'll be probably query worthy, where I can start getting my query letters together and get those sent out. And several people have told me, start at the top and work your way down.
Exactly.
There's no reason not to go for major publishing houses and then just go on down the list and see who gets it.
Absolutely. I think that's marvelous. I really love the book, and I was totally engaged in the story, the setting, the characters. It was all authentic to me. I'm honored that I got to read it, that I'm one of the few you chose to read through it, and I wish you all the best in finding a publisher. It's an outstanding book. I can't resist asking this next question though. However, do you have another novel in the works? Will there be perhaps a sequel to this?
A lot of people have asked about the sequel, and I never really thought about a sequel, but I will think about it. Some periods of time where I was frustrated getting this novel done, I wrote some other things. And I always thought that I would be a YA writer, young adult, because Judy Blume was a huge influence. As soon as the Little House on the Prairie years passed, then it was Judy Blume for probably 5 years. And I loved her stuff, and it meant a lot to me. So I always thought, okay, that's the kind of writer I'm going to be. Well, I didn't end up doing it on this book, but during some periods where I had set this book aside, I did start a YA book, also set in this area. And I've got, a handful of chapters, and I may go with that one, although I have a whole list of ideas, so I'm not sure.
Well, you can do both. You're not going to limit yourself, are you?
I shouldn't.
Well, this has been so much fun talking with you today, Megan, and thank you for being with me on Welcome to the Conversation. And thank you to our audience. If you enjoyed our program, please share us with your social media. Until next time, this is Sharon Laborde, Cultural Editor of the Ozark Radio Hour. And now please stay tuned for the following brief message.
Are you an independent author looking for a publisher? Cahaba Press is open to a limited number of submissions. Check out our Guidelines and Writer's Service package on our website for print and ebooks. Cahaba Press offers editing, formatting, and cover design at a reasonable rate. Your book will be digitized for upload to Amazon, and you will retain all rights to your intellectual property. That means you keep all your royalties. Your book will also be listed on our website, cahabapress.com. That's CAHABAPRESS.com, with a link to Amazon and their worldwide marketing platform. We take care of our writers. Email publisher at Cahaba Press for more details. We look forward to serving you.
Thank you, Sharon Laborde. And let me remind you that Sharon is also the publisher of Cahaba Press. That's CAHABA. And if you've got a book requiring a review by a professional editor, contact Sharon at publisher@cahabapress.com. Okay, what's next?
Well, Richard, you and Josh Young are giving us a peek into the wonderful world of political conventions with a short play written by Josh. Will you introduce it?
I would. Josh wrote this thing. It actually is set at the 1972 Democratic National Convention, and I found it kind of fun.
Okay, well, what's it all about?
Well, it's about a speaker at the convention who makes a pretty spectacular gaffe while he's speaking. His 1972 Waterloo was neither at Watergate nor at Water's Edge.
About 12 times a year, I used to travel down to the Ozark Folk Center in Mountain View, Arkansas, to teach elder hostel programs in Ozarks food and culture. Nowadays, they like to call elder hostelers road scholars. The gigs didn't pay very much, but the long drive from my farm down to Mountain View was one of the prettiest in Arkansas, and I never failed to meet interesting people among the participants. My two programs always launched the week's activities, so I would join the elder hostel group at their first breakfast together before my sessions began. That gave me the chance to meet everyone and study the interaction between the attendees, who were often meeting each other for the first time as well. I would usually seek out any loner in the group, if there was one, and ask to sit with him or her while we ate. As a result, on one memorable occasion, I met a delightful, erudite man. I learned my breakfast companion was a recently widowed, retired forensic psychologist from New Jersey. We found we had several things in common. We had both graduated from the University of New Hampshire. We both knew and had worked with a certain nationally renowned forensic psychiatrist. Together, we hold a few peculiar East Coast prejudices. But while I am a huge fan of the Ozarks, this gentleman seemed to feel he had been dragged to the God-forsaken end of the earth by the husband and wife team, who insisted he accompany them to the elder hostel in Arkansas after his wife died. As I rattled on somewhat lamely about the activities he would participate in the week, basket weaving, square dancing, making herbal salves and tinctures, he understandably remained skeptical and snobbishly aloof. I was almost at a loss to think of something he might enjoy. Then I remembered the groups always toured Blanchard Caverns. "You'll love Blanchard Caverns," I promised him. "It's a huge, magnificent, and virtually pristine cave. To emphasize my point," I added, "the United States Forest Service took over a year to create an entrance and public walkways, and in the process, they only broke 3 stalactites." He raised one eyebrow and gave me a funny look.
Stalactites?
He repeated the word very slowly.
That word was my Waterloo.
He added this last remark rather cryptically, and with that his voice trailed off strangely. I guess the expression on my face bespoke my confusion at his remark, because the learned doctor went on to explain.
In 1972, I was selected to make a speech on national television before the entire National Democratic Convention. I was given a speech prepared by a committee on mental health, and I was supposed to deliver the sentence, "We must not descend as slowly as stalactites."
I almost commented on bad speech writing, but I decided to hold my tongue. He continued,
"Like everyone else, I'm always getting those cave terms mixed up, so for weeks and weeks ahead of time, I was practicing and reminding myself, stalagmites grow up, stalactites grow down, stalagmites grow up, stalactites grow down. I can do this. I will get this right, I promised myself." So on the fateful day, at the appointed time, I strode confidently onto the podium, stood before all the assembly delegates of the National Convention, and plus the many cameras broadcasting my speech live to millions on TV. When I came to the part of my speech which I had been so worried about, I shouted out passionately, "We must not descend as slowly as testicles."
He glowered at me over his glasses as I tried not to spit out the coffee I was drinking. It nearly came out my nose and my ears as I made little sneak, sneak, sneak snorting sounds into a baking powder biscuit. As if daring me to laugh out loud, he went on woefully.
The first hush fell over the hall. Then the rolls of laughter began. They laughed for several minutes. The waves of laughter would wash over me and then briefly recede. It followed to the left and rippled to the right. Just when I thought the huge hall had become more or less quiet and I could continue, someone somewhere else in the huge auditorium would cackle, and everyone would begin laughing all over again. When the delegates finally settled down, the recording secretary inserted himself between the sea of microphones and me, tapped on the microphone loudly, and asked me for the official record. "Was that really what you meant to say?" Well, of course, his question caused another eruption of hilarity at my expense, and it seemed an eternity before the final tidal wave of laughter subsided, allowing me to conclude and exit the stage.
My new friend sighed as if still reliving his humiliation. I assumed he was finished with his story, so I hid my broad grin in my napkin, attempting to compose myself sufficiently to offer what would appear like sincere condolences. But he was not yet done. And at this point, the poor man seemed to go completely off the tracks.
Years later, I was touring with a group of colleagues around Yugoslavia. I'd been to Yugoslavia many times.
This seemingly disjointed information was added in a rather offhanded, slightly condescending, and classically blasé East Coast way.
After several days of tromping around the same old tourist sites, I was bored, so I sent a lot of them on a tour boat to visit one of the nearby islands with a paid guide, and I went to the local nude beach.
Nude beach, just full of surprises. This slightly balding, rather portly retired man was certainly neither prudish nor shy. Even in my wildest college days, I had only read about places like the cosmopolitan nude beaches of Yugoslavia. I had no idea where his story was headed, but soon he made that clear.
As soon as I got to the beach, I stripped out of my clothes, trotted down to the water's edge, just in time to see the boatload of my traveling companions go churning by. One woman recognized me, called everyone over to the railings, where they laughed heartily and hooted and waved. That evening, when they got back to our hotel, several of the women hunted me out with obvious glee. They giggled. "We saw you." "We saw all of you," one of them added, and asked pointedly, "Aren't you embarrassed?" "Of course not,"
he assured them bluntly.
"Not in the least. After 1972, I'll never be embarrassed again."
All right. Well, Richard, you guys are pretty good. Did you have any input in the writing of that, or are you just a stooge?
I am a talking head, as always.
Oh, okay.
Right. No, Josh Young was the writer of that. I'm not quite that skilled. But anyway.
What were you guys doing in 1972?
I was wrapping up my tour as a helicopter pilot in Vietnam.
All right, and
I was on the road somewhere doing something that I can't really put my finger on. Those were the good years.
Did it involve drugs and women?
I'm not sure.
You don't remember? This was in your guys' The Hercules of Love. Am I right?
Absolutely.
God, how our past comes to haunt us.
Runs together. So terrible. I only hate being in the room with Kent. And Dan, you're getting right up there. Listen, it's time for Tracy Johnson.
But it was a rotten trick to have Tracy here in my absence, and I thought that there was a comment sent into the show about her presence on the air with you, and I was surprised that wasn't read here today. But sometimes correspondence is overlooked.
We don't read anything you write.
What makes you think I wrote it?
Yeah.
Well,
if you're not careful, I'll show you what offensive is.
Well, look. I was really impressed with Tracy's performance, as I have been with having Jeremiah here today, and I really think at some point in time they need to do the show, and we need to sit back in the control booth and watch.
All in good time.
Okay.
But now, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Here's Tracy with a really very exciting and new band, Rosenbridge.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at Ozark Radio Hour. This is Tracy, and this week I have a band I'd like to share with you all, and their name is Rosenbridge. They're from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and as far as I can understand, they're fairly new, so I cannot direct you towards a webpage or where to purchase music, but be on the lookout in the future. Hopefully they put something out for us to buy. They do have a Facebook page, and it's ROZENBRIDGE, and Rosenbridge is 2 members, and from what I understand, they have some guest musicians from time to time, and the 2 fellas that are constant in this band, you have Christian Serrano, who plays cello. He also wears a cape, and it's quite fitting for some reason. There's Tim Warden, who is on vocals and guitar. And this last Wednesday, when I had the pleasure of seeing them, their special guest was a gal, I believe they were calling her Rada. If I'm not mistaken, she is the second chair violinist in the Tulsa Orchestra. You can tell that Tim and Christian are also classically trained, so when they play together, it was just mind-blowing. I'm actually speechless for words to describe what I saw, because I cannot. Short of being epic and magical, you just kind of had to be there. I feel really lucky that I got some audio of the show, and I'm so thankful that I get to share that with you all. These are 2 original songs by Rosenbridge. Please be on the lookout for this band when they come back through your town. I really cannot describe the experience. The first song they started out with was Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It was the most beautiful rendition of that song maybe that I've ever heard in my life. They went right from that into a Pink Floyd song so seamlessly and effortlessly. It was just like, oh my good golly, did I just hear that? And the whole night went like that. Everybody that came in there, I've never heard that many people clap and cheer after every song inside of a venue that big. It was like we were at an intimate show. They're incredible. I hope to see you out there. Until next time, be trails and safe travels. Please remember, music is medicine for our soul, and we could all use a little uplifting. Enjoy Rosenbridge.
Well, thank you, Tracy. And, I'm looking forward to actually having you come into the studio sometime when I'm here so that, you can engage in some, perhaps intelligent conversations.
There's actually one more thing I want to talk about.
All right. Well, good. All right. Jump in.
All right. So, Dan, you asked me earlier if you consider me, or if I consider myself I'm going to get the verbiage wrong that you used, progressive, I believe it was. How did you put it?
That was it.
Well, I asked if you were progressive. I described you as a semi-skilled intellectual elitist.
Oh.
Is that the phrase you're objecting to?
No, the progressive one.
Okay.
And I'm not so much objecting to it, but trying to explain why I don't understand the political jargon as much.
Okay.
Nowadays, with politics and such, looking at candidates, now, there seems to be this trend that we have to have the most extreme of either side. There is no such thing as a medium or a median line in politics. It doesn't seem like anymore.
I beg to differ. I'm still the same old Bob Dole Republican I've always been. I haven't changed a bit.
I understand that, but I mean in who we elect and who we decide is going to be our presidential candidates. You look at Donald Trump, who is extreme on his side. Hillary is extreme against him on the other side, It seems like we're having this trend of having to have an extreme look, and I don't understand that kind of extremism.
And I think that's a very good point, Jeremiah, and I think that what America is faced with in this particular political cycle is a choice which will be the most divisive probably in the last 100 years. And that regardless of who is elected, the country will be divided in a way politically that we just haven't seen in a long time. And I am really hoping, maybe hope against hope, that our tripart system of government will in fact affect a balance that will moderate the choice that the voters make with regard to the executive branch of government. Now, Congress has been so divided and so divisive that I'm not certain that there's much hope for that either. And the Supreme Court has certainly been stymied by the Republicans' unwillingness to appoint another Supreme Court justice, which has resulted in a bottleneck, if you will, of justice. But I agree with you. It's unfortunate that in this country we have become so extreme in our political views and our views of what we are supposed to be as a people, and don't seem to be able to agree on something in the middle, which is what our representative form of government and what we sometimes refer as a democracy is supposed to be all about, which is finding a middle ground. And we don't seem to be able to do it.
That's absolutely right.
It's difficult to find middle ground when the media and our politicians are involved in their own self-interests, and their motives are the transfer of wealth.
You forget you're in the media here.
and when you're bombarded with extremism, either you're a Fox News listener and you're on that side, or you listen to MSNBC and you're on that side, and there's no middle ground. There's nobody talking about a conversation. It's those people are no good. Somehow we forgot that we all live in the same country, and the interests of that person over there is the same as our interests.
Well, that's a good point, Jeremiah, and we appreciate that and your insight, your question, and your willingness to jump in there. Richard, are we done?
Yeah, it's time to say goodbye.
I'll say goodbye.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Ozark Radio Hour. Until next week, adios.
The Ozark Harvest Radio Hour is a production of the Eureka Springs Independent and the Inside Straight and Thanatopsis Club. Richard Pille, executive producer. Dan Croats, producer and writer. Dr. Sharon Sloan, technical director.
Dr. Fred Mayer, Director of Music, G.K. Chesterton, Director of Philosophy and Content, Jane Pille and Bonifaci Fiacre, Gardening Consultants, Luca Brazzi, Aquaculture Consultant, Eddie Keever and the Fabulous Keever Sisters, Advertising and Sales. The Ozark Harvest Radio Hour is organic radio, always fresh, always local, and always honest. We are community radio. That means that if you would like to appear on the Ozark Harvest Radio Hour, we have to put you on. Contact us at the OzarkHarvestRadioHour.com, like us on Facebook, or look us up in the telephone book. Until next week, so long, and be nice.
1, 2, 3, 4.